It's a great pleasure to be here this afternoon to talk to you about the Scope Joint Action. So just to start off, give a little bit of background and the context. We've obviously heard about 2 years of operation and the vast amount of work that's been done to implement large things like the PRAC and the GVP modules. But really the focus for member states is now to start obviously operating to those new legislative requirements. And the European Commission recognised the fact that there was a potentially a wide variety of maturity in the system and that support was required. So the EMA-led projects overseen by a project coordination group, ERMS, FG, and the heads of medicines agencies has made enormous progress in introducing all these various aspects. But the focus now for member states is really to start operating to those requirements, and Scope is really put in place to try and support those member states to do that effectively. So the Scope Joint Action is really a collaboration of NCAs across Europe to share their expertise and best practice, to try and deliver some practical tools and guidance that they can put in practice to really try and improve their systems, ultimately operating to the new legislative requirements across Europe. And it's really very much an emphasis of member states working together with each other, for each other, to produce hopefully a strengthened and improved capability. So the delivery is really focusing on supporting capabilities, and there's 3 broad groups of tools that we'll be sort of delivering at as a result of the project. The first we call best practice, sometimes good practice, I think, really around trying to provide guidance and recommendation based on experience and examples of how national regulators have implemented their systems. Secondly, training, aspects such as assessment capabilities and competency. Then also more practical tools that member states may be able to implement nationally, such as a tool set for promotion of spontaneous reporting systems, or maybe risk communications. We also hope as well that the deliverables may be relevant not only to EU regulators, but potentially outside the EU as well. And we're very pleased to have support of the World Health Organization on the General Advisory Group to help try and make the best of that and hopefully share that elsewhere around the world. It's important to note that we're nearly at the end of the first year, about sort of 10, 11 months in. And the joint action itself will be delivering really most of its outputs at the end of the 3 years. So we have another couple of years to go. And it's very important to note as well that it's complementary to the EU system. We're supporting member states in running the systems that have been put in place, the templates and the procedures, and the vast amount of work that's gone in to do that. So Scope Joint Action was awarded formally by the Commission in 2013, November 2013. And we were very pleased to recognise the fact that they provided the maximum and largest level of funding that they could, recognising the sort of need for the project. So I think it really shows the sort of commitment and the emphasis on the project. So this just gives a very brief outline of the structure of the project. Obviously the Commission being at the highest level, and then the MHRA as the coordinator answering to the Commission. And then below that we have a number of work packages which I'll briefly summarise in a moment. But importantly, we're also supported by a general advisory group providing expert and independent advice to the joint action so that we can really make the best of the deliverables and ensure we engage with the right stakeholders and really try to make the most out of the project. The General Advisory Board was also originally intended to have industry representation on it, but as we started into the project, it was really discovered that it was probably preferable to have a separate forum. What that would do is enable us to make sure that all the industry stakeholders that wish to participate could. So we're currently planning the first industry stakeholder forum, which we expect in the first quarter of 2015. And we'll be issuing invitations via the sort of EU trade organisation so that interested industry companies can attend. So there's three work packages which are pretty standard in all joint actions, really more practical and coordination aspects. So the coordination is led by the MHRA, and as it makes sense, it's about the project delivery, ensuring the systems are in place, monitoring the budget, and also the governance. A lot's gone into this work package really to sort of establish, I guess, a framework that the project can deliver around. The second work package, also led by the MHRA, is around dissemination and communication. And this is importantly not only about in the project but also outside, making sure we engage with the right stakeholders, and also about work to really share about progress on the project. Things like putting a website in place and also a sort of printable leaflet made available on the website. So really trying to explain what the project's for and what we're trying to achieve. For those of you who've not yet visited, this is the website, and I'll provide a link at the end. And it's a good place to visit to sort of keep updates on progress and news in the individual work packages. And towards the end of the project, we'll publish recommendations and guidance, for example, that may be interesting and useful for others. As I mentioned, the scope leaflet provides a sort of a good high-level summary of the partners, the aims, and the setup of scope, and that's also available on our website if you do wish to print one off. Importantly, I think this session we have a presentation from Frank Diafuca later about sort of linking together with other projects. And again, it's important to say that scope is not operating in isolation and just doing its own thing. We're very much linking in, and this table is really just not really doing it justice, but trying to indicate some of the work we're doing to collate objectives and try and really link those together and understand the various complementary work ongoing and try to make efficiencies rather than any potential duplication. The third work package is evaluation, led by Portugal, and again, really importantly, about making sure we deliver what we need, what we said we would, and also monitoring progress along the way to make sure we're on the target. It is a relatively early stage for evaluation, but the plans are in place, and we're working very hard with all the work package leaders to look at what we're going to measure, how we're going to make sure the recommendations, the surveys, all the different bits of work we're doing is really of good quality and help us deliver. So moving on to the sort of meat of the project, there's 5 work packages, and they all have a sort of similar approach in a way. That the first is really, I guess audit might be a bit of a strong word, but it's really about gathering information from the member states. It's gathering their experience, their practice, things that have gone well, things that have been challenging, really trying to understand that and collate that together. We're also doing that through surveys and even visits to some example regulators who allow us to visit them. Following gathering of that data, which is really sort of where we're at the moment, just about finishing the sort of first phase of data gathering, we'll really be assessing it, looking at it, trying to distill those examples of best practice, areas where help is needed to try and distill that out. Following that, obviously reporting, developing the guidance and the case studies. And then finally, it's about delivering training to really help support regulators across Europe to do things the best they can. First work package about ADR collection, and some of the topics are outlined on the slide here, things right through from the types of reporting forms in place through to the sort of media campaigns or communications activities that regulators do nationally to promote their systems, as well as linking into mobile reporting. And Mick Foy, I think this afternoon, will be talking a bit more about potential for mobile reporting and the links into sort of new media. So at the moment, we've completed the surveys work package 4, and really we're now starting to analyse the data, really trying to distill out what's going on. And the types of questions we've really covered are largely in line with the topics you've seen. What sort of fields are collected, how things are done in member states nationally, and what work they've done to integrate with IT system reporting. Work package 5 is about signal management, again, led by the Netherlands. These are the 4 topics here, right through from signal detection, validation, assessment, as well as dealing with reports of special interest, such as medication error and occupational exposure. Again, the surveys for this area have been complete, analysis starting, and you can see some of the questions we've asked again around the data sources used, the setup of the team, the processes for validating their signals, and what national systems are in place for making sure signals are tracked effectively. Spain are leading a risk communications work package. Again, the topics outlined here, really starting with gathering information about risk communications in national member states, as well as the impact of those. One survey also focuses on what member states have in place to deliver their responsibility about the web portal, hopefully to provide some recommendations and guidance to do that effectively. The surveys for this work package have now just closed, and we're developing plans for a sort of outsourced study on the impact of risk communications across Europe. And in fact, I think the subcontracting, the call to tender, was actually published today. Questions on the surveys have really covered, again, sort of aspects you might expect, the setup of the teams dealing with risk communications, the sort of competencies in place, but also the use of EU coordinated materials, and again, who manages web portals and what is actually provided on those. It's also worth mentioning, I think a second study we're planning to do is going to try and focus on some case studies following some risk communications through and trying to sort of learn, I guess, from those case studies what works well, and to try and draw some conclusions that were useful for the network. Hungary, a leading work package on quality management systems. Again, the four sort of topic areas covered are outlined below. From initially just understanding the setup in the variety of setup in NCAs. Importantly, how resources are managed with the workload that we're all experiencing, and also things like how pharmacovigilance departments interact with their inspectors. Are they integrated? How do they ensure appropriate feedback and intelligence information is fed back? Work package 7, we've done a slightly different approach. We've started off with a variety of visits to regulators with different levels of maturity in their systems, to, as I said, to try and understand the challenges and their experience with implementation of the legislation. Didn't visit all the places in that particular photo, unfortunately, but some of them. But again, highlighting the sort of the key areas just covered with the discussions. I think particularly important was asking them what their challenges were and what really worked well, so that we can use those as examples that other member states can pull out and hopefully find useful. The final work package is around pharmacovigilance assessment. We call it life cycle pharmacovigilance. It's really around assessment of the pharmacovigilance work, right through from RMPs, PSURs, as well as sort of understanding the types of data sources that maybe are used other than adverse drug reactions when assessing a particular safety issue. And again, the delivery from here will be about establishing sort of frameworks and training workshops for regulators. Surveys for this are still underway and closing at the end of September. Again, I think particular focus here is about training and competency and understanding how member states really tackle the workload and prioritise what needs to be done, as well as the sort of practical tools and things they have in place to manage it nationally. So, in summary, I thought I'd provide us just a few personal thoughts about the project, where, as I said, we're still at month 10, so we're really starting to sort of gather together and digest the data. But what I think is really important and pleasing to see is the enthusiasm and support from the regulators across the EU. We have, pleased to say, I think 29 member states signed up as partners, with I think about approximately half of those really active in the project. So I think that's great to see and really important. Secondly, I think the sort of focus and discussion about what to gather, what the most important problem, what the problems are, what we want to find out, has been enlightening as well. And I think hopefully that energy and enthusiasm will really come through, and when we move towards delivery of useful tools, materials, and training for regulators later on. And you've got the website URL there if you would like to keep updated with progress. I encourage you to visit that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.